Hello, my name is Brody McGowan, and this is my coworker over here, Ryan Patterson, and we're here in our first ever edition of the For the Fans podcast.
And our goal is to give sports fans their opinions on their said sports teams.
We will be doing this by having a lot of special guests onto this show, which will be something that we will mention later as we go throughout the night and as you get introduced to us. Ryan, I have a question. How did you get into sports in general? Because I feel like that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, well, my dad brought me up into sports at a young age, and, he kind of just raised me playing every single sport, either rec or travel, and then I got into my sports teams. What about you, Brody?
That makes sense. I mean, I started off, of course, just like my dad made me play rec when I was younger, and I was that type of kid who I was never the greatest at any of my rec sports, but I was always a passionate sports fan. I have a question. What was the first sports team that your dad got you into, and how did your dad get you into that team?
I think it would be between Rutgers football and Jets football, because I had season tickets at a young age going into, last year, before I went off to college. But yeah, just going to those games as a young age and just getting to know the players, just loving the atmosphere, that's just what, got me into it.
Well, Ryan, I actually grew up in kind of a weird household. My mom grew up a New York Giants fan because she grew up in New York, and my dad grew up a Philadelphia Eagles fan. But then I actually came out of nowhere, and due to some people who I knew in my life, I became a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And as time has gone on, my immediate family has kind of determined they would also adopt the Steelers as their personal team. That has led to some interesting stories throughout the years with my extended family, of course, who were always trying to pressure me into going one side or another. But I kind of picked Pittsburgh, and I just decided to stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, that seemed like a good choice, knowing that your grandparents were Lions fans.
Yeah, I guess you could also mention that I have grandparents from Detroit as well. Well, they grew up in Detroit, at least. So they grew up Lions fans, and then I had family who were Eagles fans who lived in Philly, and then my other family were Giants fans. But I just decided to come in there, and I went to Pittsburgh. I mean, are there any moments in particular that, in your opinion, stuck out when you were thinking about your Jets fandom?
Probably the playoffs in 2010 for the Jets, especially when I got to go with my parents and, go to a restaurant, watch them play the Steelers in the playoffs. Even though we lost, making it that far, as a Jets fan is a good feeling, knowing where we are at right now.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. I can agree upon that. But me personally, I'd actually have to go to my first Steelers game in my first ever trip to Pittsburgh. Just because, sitting there with all the terrible towels waving and getting my first terrible towel, to me, was just that's a memory that I'll always cherish. I'm pretty sure I still have that terrible towel somewhere, just due to the fact that that's such an important memory to me. And then if you were to discuss some other things about being a Steelers fan, so I have to discuss, that one Super Bowl against Arizona. I mean, that catch by Santonio Holmes was, of course, an awesome play.
Yeah, Jack.
And you can't, shout out Santonio Holmes, eventual New York Jet. But that play was a superb play, personally. And then you probably go into some newer memories where I discuss, some plays made by Antonio Brown, definitely, because he was incredible during his time. The immaculate extension against Baltimore would definitely be another one that I'd say I directly remember in my mind. So, another question. Are there any particular players that, in general?
I mean, it sounds pretty sad to say, but Mark Sanchez is one of the players that got me into it. And even though he wasn't a great player, those few years that he was good, made me think that there was a bright future until it came to a pretty fast end. But yeah, just some of the stars on those, early 2010 teams, Chris Ivory, guys that people would just laugh at if they were fans of other teams. But even those players that just had short stints with the Jets, just revolutionized my Jets fandom,
Yeah, no, in my case, I'm going to veer a little bit off that path and just talk about the one player who got me into Pittsburgh Steelers football, fully, and that was the star wide receiver by the name of Antonio Brown. I know that did not end well in Pittsburgh, as many Steelers fans will probably bring up to you today. If you go through Pittsburgh, you might not hear the nicest things about Antonio Brown, but certainly just like the fact that he was a 6th-round pick and he grinded to get to the point where he was and being the best receiver in the NFL. Don't at me on that one. Yeah. And that was certainly a story that going up story that I felt like that I can somewhat relate to. Some other players, I mean, you have to discuss Troy Polamalu. He was quite simply incredible, and he was great. And then my new favorite Steeler has to be Jersey boy Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I mean, when they made that trade last year, it was just like, you know, they were like, in fact, 2 years ago rather, they were struggling a lot, and then they made that trade, and Minkah came in and made that immediate impact, and hopefully he's the next great safety for this team. Yeah. So the next thing that I have to ask you about is, are there any other sports that you personally like?
Definitely into basketball a lot. You know, I played like my whole life up until last year. It would be the Celtics. I mean, it's kind of a weird combination, Jets and Celtics, but my dad was a big Larry Bird fan growing up, so, you know, I got into it because of my dad. And, yeah, I follow them every day. You know, Jason Tatum, you know, he's a bucket getter.
Definitely.
Jaylen Brown, we got 2 young players, but, you know, the rest of the team needs some work. What about you?
I actually grew up a Los Angeles Lakers fan due to the man or the myth or the legend named Kobe Bean Bryant, of course. As many people did grow up into that era of Lakers basketball, and they realized the greatness that quite simply was Kobe and how he inspires, especially all the players today, like Tatum and Brown. Yeah, but Bryant was just somebody who like completely inspired me through like his work ethic and that type of stuff. So it made being a Lakers fan easy to root for. However, last year I actually decided to switch up on my longtime NBA fandom because I now attend Butler University in Indianapolis. So with that being the case, I pretty much got a couple of Pacers games in this year, and the history of just Indiana and basketball and the extent that that state loves the sport made me essentially fall for the Indiana Pacers, and now I have actually switched up on the Lakers and I've become a Pacers fan. So when it comes to players for them, it's essentially, I mean, you know, you got right now, like you have a couple of guys who might get traded. That's like a kind of a conversation. But Chris Duarte, I mean, they drafted him out of the draft and nobody really expected him to be much. But going to the couple of games that I've been to and watching him have a couple of really good games against Miami and the Mavericks, it's been fun to watch. And he's definitely a fun player who I'm liking as I'm now getting into the Pacers after moving to Indy. So the next thing that I would like to mention is that our podcast, well, we like to have special guests as mentioned beforehand. So in our Instagram highlights, actually, we have a form that you can fill out if you would like to come onto this show and talk about anything related to your favorite sports teams. If you want to talk about leagues, if you want to talk about teams, if you want to talk about your favorite team, pretty much just anything. What you just have to do is you have to go into our Instagram, which is at ForTheFans_. And from there, you can go in and you can pretty much fill out the form and just, I think it's like 3 simple questions, and we will get back to you from your email as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and we'd also just kind of like to ask you to subscribe and like, just so we can, you know, continue to bump out content for you guys. And yeah. Yeah,
I mean, this is the beginning of our journey. And right now, this is like super duper exciting, and we are stoked to be here because it's like, it's brand new to us, but the goal is to stay on the grind. We want to have 2 videos out every single week, no matter what. And as a result of that, we would like you guys to come along on this grind with us. Because I think that having the people who are the day ones on this channel, I mean, everybody's going to mean a lot, especially whoever we have, but having the day ones there, that's equally as special. So all that I can say is we are super excited to have whoever wants to watch this, we are super excited to have you here. So from the bottom of your heart, just thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we really have big plans for this, you know, this podcast, and As passionate sports fans, like this is our biggest dream, is just to talk about sports, for hundreds and maybe thousands of people one day. Like me and him, we've been talking about sports for our whole lives. Like now we can put that, on camera.
Yeah, that's definitely exactly what I can say. And with that being the case, this is Brody McGowan.
And Ryan Patterson.
And we are signing off from the For the Fans podcast. Thank you for being here with us.